Well, Dr. Zaway kind of took a little bit of what I was going to say, but good afternoon. My name is Anthony. Some of you already know me. And today I'm going to take you on the adventure of what it's been like to become the assistant audition coordinator for Crane River Theater. So first of all, for those of you who aren't quite familiar with it, like Dr. Zaway said, ASL, or Academic Service Learning, is basically taking what we have done throughout our college career and applying it with hands-on experience to a company or agency of our choice to give something back, to contribute to them, and to ease into that transition. A lot of people confuse it with like an internship. That's not really what it is. The main difference is that reflective unit, that ability to reflect on what you do, to record what you're doing, to record what you've learned, experiences, challenges, things you've gained, stuff like that. And I have personally done my own journals in that portfolio there. If you'd like to reference it at any time after the presentation, you are more than willing to do so. So it just basically creates a better connection between the agency of your choice and the university itself. So the agency that I chose to do, quite obviously, is Crane River Theater, and my partner here, Steve Barth, is joining me today, and I thank you for appearing here. It was founded in 2009 by three childhood friends, Brooke Bradford, Brian Botsford, and Steve Barth. They grew up together, they were raised together, and they had to kind of go their own ways. But after a few years, they came back together and they said, you know what, why don't we merge our assets together and give back to the community that gave us so much? So that's really how the nonprofit organization Crane River came into being. And every year they put on local and regional auditions to cast for different shows, musicals, plays, productions, you name it. And they also put on different programs like Explore Theater, Page Stage, Backstage, things to kind of get the children and the youth and the people of the community invested into the performing arts. It also helps the people in Kearney work with people from all over the country. The regional auditions bring in people from any state that you can think of, basically. And they've been awarded the Governor's Art Awards as emerging leaders in Nebraska. So as part of this class, we had to come up with our own learning objectives, things that we wanted to accomplish while working with an agency of our choice. My first one, and one of my most important ones, is improving communication skills. First and foremost, as the assistant audition coordinator, I was liaison. I had to keep in contact with every applicant and let them know kind of their status, where they were, if we were accepting them, whether they were being rejected, whether we were keeping them in consideration, and I was doing so through emails, phone call, you name it. And as part of my policy, if it's being passed around, you might see that I kind of created a skeletal template about how to formulate those different emails for those different contexts. And it's also about improving my face-to-face interactions through like the local auditions. I wasn't able to travel to the regional ones. The first two that I went to here dealt primarily with children, but the one here at UNK in the choral room, they were people more my age and up. So I really had to step up my game because it also improved my leadership skills. It made me have to really step up my game, really assert myself in a position of dominance where they would follow me, because as we talked about in class, your leadership is where one can lead others to produce results and accomplish tasks. So I had to say, okay, hey, I need a line here, you're gonna start filling out your application. I need a line here, you need to start picking up the documentation, read up about what we're doing, what shows we're doing, and applicants A, B, and C, I need you ready because that's how you're going in that kind of order. And leadership is also about responding well to constructive criticism. And for me, that was exemplified when I first started at Crane, when I was first starting to be the liaison and emailing people. Steve kind of noticed that I was being a little bit more professional than I needed to be. So he kind of worked with me and helped me develop more of a style that was between professionalism and personability, because that is why Crane River is so valued in the community. And through the informational meetings that we had a couple weeks ago, we basically gave the local applicants the opportunity to come and fill out their paperwork, to get their costume measurements taken, to get their headshots taken, and I was kind of given a glance at how to run that kind of thing, how to run people around and stuff like that. So my second objective was improving my critical thinking and decision-making skills. With Crane River, one of the most vital elements that I have been a part of is with the casting procedure for our summer shows of The Wizard of Oz, Oklahoma, and Tuesdays with Maury. After each audition, we come back with every headshot, every resume that we compiled, we put them out on the floor, and we break each show down into the categories. So for Wizard of Oz, say we have a section for Dorothy, for Tin Man, for Scarecrow, for Lion, etc. And we go through each one, and we say, okay, hey, this one would work well as a Dorothy for these reasons. We weigh the pros and cons of each one. We say, okay, hey, they can sing, they have stage presence, are they physically built for that role, etc. And we usually compile them up 4 to 5 members deep in each category for backup purposes. And then we start establishing tracks. And in theater, what a track is where one person might play a role in multiple shows. So when we bring in people from outside of the state, we can't have them playing just The Wizard of Oz and sit out for the rest of it. They need to be in all of our shows. So the Curly in Oklahoma might also play the Emerald City Guard in Wizard of Oz, something like that. And then some examples of my improved decision making. During the first week when I was with Crane, I was given the task of going around 2nd Avenue and distributing advertising. And at the time, and still now, I don't really know Kearney all that well, so instead of calling Steve and say, hey, I delivered one, give me the address to the next one, I kind of went in and stopped in and asked for directions myself. It may not seem like that big of a deal, but to me, I was presented with a problem and I solved it on there. Taking initiative, the longer I've worked with Crane, the more comfortable I've become, and I've been able to do things without Steve holding my hand or telling me what to do at certain times. So there was one day when I got there and I realized, okay, hey, there's a list of people that need to be called and say, you didn't make it. So I was calling them up one by one saying, you were great, you had good talent, unfortunately we cannot cast you, and stuff like that. We had one applicant that I told this to who started crying, who broke down and kind of didn't take it well, so I had to sit there for the next 20 minutes and talk him down, assuring them that it wasn't a personal decision, it was just that we had an extremely large talent pool. I didn't have Steve to take the phone away from me and say, oh, I'll recover, and this is how you do it. I had to do it on my own. And then making technical casting decisions. This is regarding stage managing, assistant stage managing, lighting, scenery, etc. like that. We have to take into consideration their combination of skills. So a stage manager might also be a light designer, and that might be better than just a regular stage manager because we need to bring in as few people as possible with the most amount of talent. But Steve has also taught me that that's not always a good solution because sometimes somebody who specializes in different fields might not be entirely devoted to one or the other. So sometimes you do need a person who's strictly one thing or the other. So some basic challenges faced. A little bit of intimidation, I will admit. Obviously, I have the least amount of experience among those who work at Crane River Theater, but Steve Barth has done an excellent job with making me feel welcome, making me feel comfortable and part of the family. Dealing with emotion. In class, we talked about emotion and inappropriate and appropriate forms of emotion and burnout. And burnout is where the multiple roles in a person's life conflict to create stress. And Steve and I can both attest to this. We will arrive at Crane River office, and we're having multiple things doing. Our heads are pretty much off our shoulders. We're running around, and we're not really sure how to, talk to each other, kind of communicate on that level. Sometimes we're not asking the questions that need to be asked. So there is sometimes that level of disconnect, but we always manage through. Dropbox is the electronic categorizational system that we have at Crane River that houses all of our documents that we use throughout the season. At first, I'll admit, it took me forever to figure out which file came from which folder. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands of documents, I swear. But like I said, the more I've been there, the more comfortable I've been able to start just subconsciously pulling things as I need it. The casting pressure, I'm part of a professional theatrical production company. We cast for these shows for the community and surrounding areas. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure there because whoever we cast is going to affect how the show is portrayed to the people and how they receive us. So it might affect whether they come back to see us again in future years. And then finding that balance between professionalism and personability in the email, like I kind of said, finding that ability to be personable but yet with that professional flair to it. Some skills gained, social skills. Like I said, I've been able to talk to people a little bit more to come out of my shell, improve decision making, critical thinking, leadership, and then that professionalism and personability. Like I said, it was one of the hardest things I've had to get a hold of, but I feel like it is one of the best skills that I've gained while there. And then knowledge of professional settings. In class, we talked about the human relations metaphor and about how different companies operate different ways. And I can definitely attest that Crane River is a very human-related company because no matter who they are, whether they're the workers or the applicants, whoever comes through Crane River, they are treated like family, and I can personally attest to that. And then speaking my mind, expressing my opinion, and confidence are just three other things that I have gained, and I've been able to come out of my shell and kind of make that transition. And then skills to be gained, community programs. What I mean by that is kind of like what I talked about on my second slide about like the Explore Theater series, the Backstage, those kind of things. I didn't have a direct hand in incorporating any of those. If I could go back and redo it, I'd try to get involved a little bit more with those. I was kind of given the option, but I heard about this casting procedure plan and I kind of ran with that because it sounded really fun. So, and then the main question I have is why does UNK not offer education in regards to what I am doing? And what I mean by that is the casting, the liaisoning, the business sector, all of that. There's really nothing specified with our theater program. I've been with them for 4 years. They're kind of more generic. They kind of lump things together. And nothing against them per se, but I just really feel like they should specialize in a field a little bit more. And then some general advice. I'd say everybody needs to do ASL at some point in their life, and I get started as soon as possible, not necessarily meaning do it your freshman year, but do not wait until your last semester of your senior year because it's not only a good experience, but it'll help you with the rest of your schooling as well. And choosing a project that suits your interests. Do not feel pressured. Do not pick something because you think you're under deadline or because it's just an assignment for class. I got really lucky. Steve offered me this casting assistant audition coordinator position, and it sounded like a blast, and I ran with it. I got really lucky. But I can see how the possibility to just pick one because of a deadline is there, so make sure you do not fall for that. And then my final project that I have contributed is the casting procedure policy that Steve Barth or somebody else hired in my position, or anybody else that he deems worthy can reference. It kind of gives you tips to follow, strategies to consult, and just things to know where you're at along the process. So it's being passed around somewhere, but we broke it down into 3 sections. First section is pre-audition. This is where you basically define what shows you want to do. Are you going to do musicals? Are you going to do plays? What kind of productions are you going to do? And then you have to do a whole script analysis, figuring out how many roles you're doing, what costumes they need, everything like that. And then you need to establish your sites. You basically need to know where you're going to go to recruit your theatrical talent. And there are various festivals all around the country We went to 4 of them, United Professional, Midwest, and American College Theater Festival. But basically you need to tell them, what you're looking for, who you are, what productions you're doing. Are you looking for part-time or full-time? What's your housing status? What's your transportation status? What's the situation on equity? All of those things. And then you need to create your audition process. And basically this differs between local and regional, because for the local, you have fewer people, so you have more time to analyze each person, and they're not going to be, they're not going to have their piece memorized more than likely. But for the regional ones, they have about 90 seconds to get in, present what they prepared, and get out. And the callback's a little bit different. The callback is a little bit longer because it's pertaining more to a role in your position. And then distributing advertising, like I said before, you have to alert your festivals of what you're looking for, all of that information regarding equity, transportation, housing, stuff like that. And then compiling documents, taking the documents that you've used in previous seasons and updating them, or creating ones that fit your needs. The audition application form, a sheet that tells you about all the shows you're doing, a little bit of information about those. And then for later on in the case, W-9, new hire, stuff like that. Costume prices, when you did your script analysis at the beginning, you had to figure out how many roles there were and what their costumes were, because you have a budget, like everything else. So if you're planning on bringing in more people and you have all these costumes, but you're running over the budget, you may need to cut some of those out. And then establishing a timeline just to basically keep you in check to know what you gotta do. During the audition process, you obviously print the forms, you bring them to each audition site that you need, local and regional. And for the local, this is basically just your audition application form, your informational sheet, and stuff like that. And then you implement the steps that you asserted in the pre-audition into your audition and callback. So you have them read what they're going to read, you have them sing what they're going to sing. And for the music selection, it all depends on what show you're doing. So if you're doing a musical, you might want to pick something lyrical. If you're doing a classical show, you might want to pick some more classic music. And then the post-audition process, this is what I was talking about before. We break them out, we set them on the floor, we weigh the pros and cons. Per role, we analyze who's bringing what to the table. We find our central role, who fits the role the best, and we kind of break off of it from there and cast further. The liaisoning situation, where you start getting a hold of people and telling them their situation and where they're at. And you need to start making offers right away, because obviously the longer you wait, the more likely simply they're going to be taken by another theatrical production company. And then you start establishing your tracks, like I mentioned before. You create your cast list, so basically you set up a spreadsheet with all the roles and whoever you're considering under each role position. Making your technical casting decision, like your stage managing, assistant stage managing, stuff like that. And then all leading up to the informational sessions that you hold about a month and a half outside of your first practice, where you basically have everybody you've accepted for your locals to come and fill out paperwork, to get their costume measurements taken, to get their headshots taken, and stuff like that. In the policy itself, I've gone into a lot more detail. I have appendices that have example documents from various situations. If you'd like to reference that, you may. I encourage you to read through it if you'd like, but other than that, those are my references, and I am more than happy to take questions if you have them. Thank you.